Today's broadcast opens with a reality check. No emojis, no filters, just the straight and sometimes uncomfortable truth. On November 23rd, Banda and his associates stepped into the national spotlight in a moment that felt less like a press update and more like a hard-edged accountability bulletin straight to the nation. The tone was unmistakably serious, but not without style. News delivered with numbers, actual receipts, and the kind of frustration that only surfaces when the nation's leaders finally say, enough of the old normal. Today's message wasn't about drama. It was about transparency, fiscal truth, national growth, and the uncomfortable but necessary reminder that a nation can't keep patching a leaking roof with slogans. Today, Brian and the team went whispering. They were talking to the whole nation and daring everyone to listen. Brian Banda opens the address with a tone that American audiences would call calm before the storm journalism, where the presenter is holding the fire but hasn't blown it yet. He states that this program is not about rumors, personal attacks, or political theatrics, but about the economic reality Malawi is facing. He emphasizes that this conversation must be about honest analysis grounded in real data and real performance. Instead of evasive answers, he demands clarity, responsibility, and unfiltered truth, something American newsroom culture tends to respect. His opening reminds people that national progress doesn't come from speeches, but from systems with measurable improvement. He signals early on that today is not just business as usual. It's time for a serious national financial performance review without excuses. And if the room wasn't fully awake yet, fact 2 is where things start hitting harder, because this is where the money conversation gets uncomfortable. Brian moves into one of the most critical points of the address: government spending. And he doesn't just dance around it, he cuts straight in, American style. He points out that several government ministries and public institutions are consistently spending beyond the budgets they were legally allocated. And this overspending is not small, symbolic, or accidental. Billions are being used that were never approved, authorized, or assigned. He questions how Malawi can move forward if the people managing the public purse are spending as though the national budget is an infinite ATM with no withdrawal limit. He underlines that it's not enough to simply announce projects. Financial discipline must exist. He makes it clear that without working within spending guidelines, development stalls, accountability collapses, and citizens lose trust. And if someone thought this was just a critique, fact 3 brings the detailed numbers that make the conversation impossible to ignore. With the precision of a news analyst digging through official records, Brian Banda lists specific overspending cases that would make even a Wall Street auditor blink. Certain government bodies, such as the Office of the Vice President, have spent nearly double what their budgets allowed, and not over several years, but within a matter of months. That level of financial burn rate is shocking because it doesn't align with national revenue growth. If Malawi was making Apple-level revenue, maybe it could slide. But in this economic reality, money must be treated like oxygen, not confetti. Banda highlights that when spending is not aligned with earning, the result is debt, inflation, and economic instability that everyday citizens feel long before politicians do. The data speaks loudly, without emotional emphasis. And before anyone can argue, maybe these expenses were strategic, fact 4 forces a more serious look at the environment enabling this behavior.
Banda moves into the spending categories that are crowding the national wallet: excessive travel expenditures, inflated procurement costs, and delegation sizes that appear far larger and more expensive than necessary. In American business journalism, this sounds like a company spending more on boardroom lunches than product development. These habits drain national resources that should be invested in development, infrastructure, health, and education. Banda stresses that Malawi cannot afford this level of administrative luxury. Not now, not in this economy. When leaders travel first class while citizens struggle, public confidence collapses. He makes it clear that efficiency is not optional. It is vital for national survival. Spending must stop being ceremonial and start becoming strategic, measurable, and tied to citizen benefit, not office comfort. And now, after all the breakdowns and receipts, Fact 10 brings the message home in one final push. Banda closes with a message that would fit perfectly in a U.S. primetime editorial. Malawi must fix the economy, not in theory, not next political cycle, but now. He clarifies that his message is not meant to shame leaders or create political drama. The purpose is to protect the country from internal collapse caused by administrative waste and financial misalignment. Without structural reform, professional accountability, and spending discipline, Malawi cannot create the growth citizens are expecting. He also reminds listeners that leaders cannot assume their positions are permanent. Tomorrow, the government could shift, and those now in power could be evaluated by the next administration. So the solution is simple. Do the job now, build systems that don't require heroism, and fix the economic engine before it burns out. If you are the kind of viewer who wants real news, facts, not fluff, receipts instead of rumors, and analysis that treats your intelligence seriously, then make sure you subscribe to @Global Pulse News. Hit the like button, drop a comment about the fact that shocked you most, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown. This story isn't done, this topic isn't closed, and the national accountability journey is still unfolding. Be part of the audience that pays attention and demands better.
Koma Malawi. Banda shifts from numbers to culture, explaining that Malawi will never develop if leadership continues treating financial management as business as usual. He calls out the systemic lack of professionalism, weak accountability channels, and the comfort many office holders seem to have with mismanaged funds. He notes that many professionals working within the system feel frustrated, shackled, and unable to execute real reforms, not because they lack skill, but because structures and leadership attitudes slow progress. This statement echoes a distinctly American newsroom opinion segment tone, firm, factual, and delivered with "we need to fix this now" urgency. He essentially tells the country that economic failure is not about bad people alone, but about bad systems protecting bad habits, and that must change. And speaking of leadership, Fact 5 hits leaders personally because responsibility is not just symbolic, it is measurable. Brian Banda's next point would make any U.S. political analyst nod. Power is not a decoration, it is a weight, and those who hold it must be accountable. He emphasizes that leaders cannot walk into public office and behave as though rules exist only for the governed, never the governing. Malawians deserve leaders who treat authority as responsibility, not privilege. If you are in office, you answer to citizens, and no office entitles someone to operate without transparency. This is classic civic journalism, reminding office holders that taxpayers are their employers, not their spectators. Banda makes it clear that progress cannot come if leadership culture continues to revolve around personalities and pride instead of policy, deliverables, and measurable results. But leadership accountability is only half the challenge. Fact 6 shows how structural chaos makes everything worse. In this section, Banda highlights a problem that any American corporate strategist would recognize. When too many people are giving orders and nobody follows a structured chain of command, efficiency collapses instantly. He explains that government decision-making is often disorganized, with overlapping directives, multiple points of authority, and little consistency in execution. The result is paralyzed programs, incomplete initiatives, and wasted funding. Banda stresses that development is not possible in this kind of administrative free-for-all. Systems must work like streamlined machines, not crowded rooms where everyone talks but nothing moves. He notes that Malawi has talented administrators and experts, but their effectiveness is being suffocated by leadership fragmentation. In short, without decision discipline, national goals will remain stuck in committee rooms forever. And as soon as structural problems are clear, Fact 7 shows how the national numbers reflect the growing pressure. Banda brings out the national financial figures with the clarity of a news anchor presenting a major business report. He lays out the numbers, 281 billion, then 512 billion, and ultimately national financial exposures hitting 8.589 trillion. These figures are not being shared to shock, but to demand awareness and realism. You cannot run a nation properly by expanding spending dramatically without matching it with economic growth. If this were an American business network panel, analysts would be asking how you expect to keep investor confidence with negative balance momentum. Banda makes it clear that these ballooning numbers are not signs of development, they are warnings that financial acceleration has no brakes installed. The country is operating in a danger zone without buffers. And if someone says, but maybe revenue will catch up, Fact 8 explains why that's not happening fast enough. Revenue collection is not increasing at the pace required to support the massive budget swings, Banda explains. Malawi is surviving largely through borrowing, development assistance, and external financial support mechanisms rather than organic national revenue strength. And that creates vulnerability. In American economic journalism terms, this is what analysts call fiscal exposure with no insurance. You can't spend dramatically more when internal income is too low to sustain momentum. Banda points out that while spending increases are obvious, revenue increases are flat or underperforming. This mismatch means Malawi risks slipping into long-term structural debt problems, where more money is being borrowed simply to keep the engine running. That strategy is survivable short-term but dangerous long-term because eventually repayment catches up. But beyond earnings and spending, Fact 9 shows where a lot of the money disappears into travel, procurement, and administrative overflow.